Hello, everyone. Hello, hello. I can see people joining, so I'm just going to give the usual 5-7 seconds for people to join in. Yeah, people tuning in. Good evening, everyone. So let us get going with the startup seminars. So hello, everyone, and welcome to the startup seminar series. I'm your host, Rui, and I cannot believe that this is our last seminar, actually, and we hope that you had an opportunity to join our event so far. It's weird to say that Christmas will be in a month's time. So today, the 24th, in a month's time, we'll be celebrating Christmas. We hope that you're all keeping well, and the team would like to end the term with a bang. So here it goes. So you've been attending all of these great events, but there's one that is missing, which is a City Spark Marketplace, or if we're going to kind of rename it, let's call it the City Spark COVID-19 Recovery Challenge. So the deadline to apply is the 27th of November. So this Friday, we have 4 prizes of £1,000 each for grabs. So make sure that you mark the deadline on your calendar, start your application as soon as possible, and do visit city-spark.co.uk to find out more. If you have your phone with you, just hit that QR code to find out more. And to help you with your next slide, to help you with your application for City Spark, or if you have a really good business ideas that you've been working on throughout the term and don't know what to do next, do book an appointment to come and see a member of the team. I've made a few slots available, and some of my colleagues also made a few slots available to discuss any business ideas that you might have with us. So again, if you have your phone with you, hit that QR code, and that will take you to the platform where you can book a slot. So the startup seminar series ends today, and because we are nearing Christmas, like I said, we wrapped a little present for you. No, it has nothing to do with cat memes, but we are proud to present the startup series. It's not coming on Netflix, don't get too excited, but we made it available for you to watch or rewatch. We had so many great stories so far. We actually finishing with a great story tonight. We have exceptional insight and advice from the world of entrepreneurship that this series is not to be missed. Again, if you have your phone with you, hit that QR code and share it with your friends, with your colleagues, even with your family, and you can watch it now, anytime you like. This last seminar will be available either tonight or tomorrow morning, so do stay tuned for the complete series. And the seminars and many other amazing things can be found on the usual social media platforms. So we are on Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Again, there's the QR code there for YouTube. And more about the things that we have planned or the things that we have in place, you can visit ct.ac.uk/entrepreneurship. And the slide was rather short today, but without further ado, now it's time to welcome to the virtual stage Kresse Wesling, the founder of Elvis and Kresse. Hello, Kresse.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Very good. It's it's nice and cold here.
You are in Kent, right? By the mill, by the factory?
Yes.
I was just looking at Google Maps this week to see to see where you are based, and the area just looks amazing. But it's a rather cold day today. It's winter time, so I'm going to stop my sharing now. And Kresse, if it's okay with you, we probably start the seminar with a few questions from me, just to get us going. But a bit introduction before I ask those questions, actually. So to our audience, Kresse Wesling is a Canadian-born, Kent-based, multi-award winning entrepreneur building profitable businesses that solve environmental problems. Kresse founded their first business, an environmental packaging alternative company in Hong Kong back in 2002. But by 2004, she launched this business in the UK and since helped to build two other sustainable businesses. One of them is Babalu, a mother and baby business, and You Clothing, a line of eco sports and casual wear. In 2007, Kresse launched Elvis and Kresse, which turns industrial wastes into a diverse range of innovative products and returns 50% of the profits to charity. I chose not to say much more about Elvis and Kresse because hearing it from Kresse, I had the pleasure and the privilege to see and hear Kresse on a few occasions, even online, and this is one of my favorite businesses of all time. And the idea is so simple. It's like you always think like I could have done this, but no, it was Kresse. So hello again, Kresse.
Hi.
The questions that I have for you are just tell us a little bit about yourself, like where did you grow up? What was family life like?
Sure. I grew up in Western Canada in the 80s. And I think that life was really a dream because I spent every weekend camping, a lot of it in the Rocky Mountains. So I have more fear of people than I do of bear or moose or things like that. And I had a great family, amazing education. That was definitely the decade where Canada was selling all of its oil and gas for lots of money, and that meant that education, which is always, it's a very socialist country, so our free education was brilliant. I then moved to Hong Kong when I was 16 years old. I got a scholarship to finish high school there. And that was probably the shock of the change that really turned me into an environmentalist, because overnight I went from kind of the pristine wilderness to this Uber city. And not just an Uber city, but one that was really geared around consumption. And one of the first speakers that we had at our school was a marine biologist who explained that Hong Kong should have more species of coral than anywhere else in the world, and it should have more sharks. But because there's so much waste from ships, and because half of the sewage of the people from Hong Kong just goes untreated into the sea, sharks can't hunt and there is no coral. And yeah, overnight, when you learn something like that in a place of such wealth, but also such damage, you realize that you're going to have to really gear your life towards doing something else.
Okay. I'm curious about the bears now. Was it black bear, grizzly bear? What kind of bear? I know that the grizzly ones tend to be the.
I've seen both, but I have more experience with black bear. More experience with.
Okay, they tend to be more docile, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What were you mentioned waste, and I know that waste would be a big part of your presentation today, of your presentation. So, but I'm also interested in picking up some of your interests when you were younger. So, when you were a student, perhaps at university level, what were the things that would spark your interest?
I studied politics when I was at school. I really thought at the time that if you wanted to make real change, it was going to be in the political realm. I went on, to do politics at university. And when I studied it at university, I realized that for my type of personality, unless you're going to be a benevolent dictator, it's probably not the environment for you. I loved biology. I loved chemistry. I loved physics. I loved maths. I pretty much loved school. I'm afraid I was a bit of a geek. I studied all the time, and I couldn't ever, if there was something that I didn't know that I wanted to discover, I was basically digging into books on that. I mean, and this is all in the pre-internet days. I can't imagine what a nightmare I would have been if I had access to Google, because then I could have been researching 24/7. Whereas, when I was at school, it was library hours only.
Okay. So a bookworm, if you like.
Yeah.
One of the things that we kind of created in our TBC City Ventures was these tiny personas that you see on my background, thinker, maker, or fixer. So, Kresse, if we were to kind of ask you what kind of entrepreneur do you think you are, which one would that be? We have a wild card, so we call it the mixer, if you like. So, but from thinker, maker, fixer, which one?
I'm a thinker, and I'm a thinker, but it's kind of I'm a fixing thinker. So I often say that, you know, I'm not a you know, some people say, oh, are you a thought leader in the circular economy or something like that? And I always disagree. I'm like, no, because we're doing it. You know, we've built a company around our values. So I do think a lot about the kind of world we want to live in and the kind of company we want to be, but it's not enough to just think it. You have to do it.
To do something.
Um, and I'm very lucky because Elvis is, I would say, a maker slash fixer. So between the two of us, we have all the skills that you need.
One thing I wanted to keep pick up, and the rest of the team, we've been exchanging a few texts over WhatsApp, is that we all very amazed by your background. Is that fire hose?
Yes.
Crucial part of Elvis and
Yeah,
Kresse.
that's it.
I will let you. I will let you
It's
share.
everywhere, Rui. It's everywhere.
Okay, I will let you share that with our audience because, like I said, I had the privilege to see you quite a few times, so I know pretty much all there is to know about Elvis and Kresse. And I'm really excited to have you back. But I will let you know. I will let you kind of share your more about Elvis with the audience. I'll finish off with one last question, and then the stage is yours. And we, as usual, will have the Q&A function. At the end, I'll read some of the questions from our audience. And to our audience, please shoot your questions, and I'll pick them up towards the end of Kresse presentation. So, Kresse, one thing I find extremely interesting, but also equally important in your approach is how you dive into a problem to help you find a solution. So, as I said, I've seen you pitching and public speaking many times, and this to me is fundamentally what a good entrepreneur would do. Dive into the problem to help you find a solution. What would be your advice to our young audience about starting your own business or starting their own business?
I think it is really important to live and understand the problem that you're trying to solve. You know, a lot of the social enterprises that you see going awry are when the social entrepreneurs see a problem over there, like in a different geography that is affecting a different demographic that they don't really have personal experience of. You know, I came to the UK, I went to the landfill sites, I spent 6 months in and out of all the landfill sites, and then I started bringing waste home and putting it in the middle of the floor and becoming a world expert in each one of the materials that we had. And not just an expert in the material, but an expert in who made this waste, how much is there, what is it, what's its next best life. And I think it's that if you're not obsessed with the problem that your business is trying to solve, then it's going to be harder for you to solve it. And actually you have to almost marry your problem, because the more wedded you are to your problem, business models shift and change, you may pivot, but if you are problem focused, then you'll always be able to adapt your business to stick with the problem and really get to the heart of that. And that's what a social entrepreneur really has to do.
Okay, so would you say, and I have to ask another cheeky question. So would you say that the more you dive into the problem, the easier finding the solution it might be?
I think so. And also not just the easier the solution, but the more collaborators you find, the more of a network you can build, because you soon find that you might be the only person who loves that particular problem, but not every aspect of it. You know, the more, you know, and it's easier to work harder if you're obsessed. You need less, when you have an obsession, you don't need that much sleep or food or anything.
Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to now give the stage to Kresse. She will have an opportunity to share with us all there is to know about Elvis and Kresse and how to pitch in front of an audience. Kresse, I'll see you on the other side. I'm going to mute myself now and stop the video, okay?
Cool. I will share the screen and go through some go through some slides, and then I'll leave lots of time for questions.
Okay, fantastic. I'll see you on the other
Right.
side. Good luck.
Is everyone seeing the lovely picture of fire hose?
Yes.
Brilliant, excellent. So as Rui was mentioning before, I came to the UK in 2004. I had some startup experience under my belt, but what I was really interested when I came here was what kind of problems are there in the UK? What kind of challenges are there in the UK? And the problems that I've always loved are waste problems. So the first place that I went, this is, really cast your memory back, because you couldn't just Google ONS data. I couldn't find out how much waste there was in the UK and what it consisted of. I went to the British Library. I met some amazing librarians there. They have a business and IP center, which is open to the public, and you can find out pretty much anything about anything there. It's really brilliant. And I said, well, how much waste is there in the UK? And in that year that I arrived in 2004, 100 million tons of waste went to landfill. And it seemed to me to be this obscene amount. And I thought, well, how can that be? This is a European civilized country. Why are we still relying on landfill? The UK's recycling rates were some of the worst in Western Europe at that point. So in order to understand what 100 million tons looked like, because it just seemed to me to be this obscene figure, I started going to landfill sites. And I went landfill site, landfill site, landfill site. And now if I'd had, a smartphone with me, I would have been taking photos. I would have been doing maps. I would have been, making little pings of, oh, I found this really cool waste there. But as it was, I had a little notebook and I started making lists of all the really cool materials that I saw going to waste that I didn't think needed to go to waste. And then one day I found a fire hose and I thought, why is that here? Why is that? Why is a fire hose go to landfill? And it just so happened that I was doing an environmental auditing course, and literally 2 weeks after I saw my first fire hose in landfill, I met these amazing people from the London Fire Brigade, and I said, "Hey, why do you landfill your old hoses?" And it's for two reasons. The first reason is because a hose will reach its end of health and safety life, and that's 25 years. So in London, in a good year, where we only have hoses that are dying because they reach the end of their health and safety life, there's 3 tons of fire hose waste. The second reason why fire hose goes to landfill is if you get a catastrophic tear in it. Your average fire hose is 22 to 23 meters long. And imagine if you get a big, massive burn hole at meter 11. Well, some holes they can patch, some they can't. And if they can't patch the hole, then that goes to landfill. And in a bad year, so when London has a lot of big fires and things like that, we can get up to 10 tons a year. So the wastage due to fire can increase the amount I collect by 7 tons a year. So this is the problem, this beautiful photo in front of you. This is what I saw. I saw this beautiful hose and I thought, wow, I've got to do something about that. So I started bringing it home. Each hose weighs about 18 kilos. And it was in Croydon and I was in Brixton, and I was basically carrying it home hose by hose. I was training for the marathon, so this was my way of staying really fit. And I started to become, a world expert in hose. How much is there? 3 to 10 tons. Who produces it? London Fire Brigade. What is the material? And for that, I went up to Yorkshire, where fire hose is made, where this particular kind of fire hose was invented. I spent a lot of time with the manufacturer, understanding what its properties are, how heat resistant it is, how it reacts to UV. And that led us down the pathway of, some first failed prototypes. The first thing I wanted to make with these beautiful hoses was roof tiles. But if you put fire hose outside for 10 years, it will crack because it doesn't really like the sun that much. And if you no longer have it as a hose, if there's no water running through it, then it's flammable. So if I'd made roofing materials, I would have made leaky, flammable roofs. So research is kind of key. What I went back to the British Library to discover was where in the world nitrile rubber gets used, because a fire hose is 2 walls of nitrile rubber sandwiching a nylon woven core. That's why it can't get recycled, because it's this composite material. You can't shred it, melt it, and start again. But I went back to the library to understand, what is nitrile rubber? What can it be used for? And I discovered that nitrile rubber was often used by French luxury companies for really, really high-end expensive goods. And I thought to myself, how hard can it be to compete with these companies? They're making this brand new, expensive polymer, and I've essentially got tons and tons of this polymer for free. I also looked deeper into the luxury world at that point, and what I discovered was incredibly disappointing. I discovered an industry that had structurally failed. The World Wildlife Federation had commissioned a report to look into luxury, which I read at the British Library. And it said that basically there was no company that was achieving above a C+ when you talked about its environmental performance or its ethical performance. And this is an industry that makes an absolute fortune and is supposed to be about quality and craftsmanship and provenance. And actually, it used to be. But all of that has been lost in this pursuit of profits and complicated supply chains and shareholder return. And to me, all of that sucked. And I thought, I've got this beautiful material. I'm looking at an industry that I think has structurally failed. And what's my response to that? And the response to that, let's see if I can get the slides to move forward. The response to that was to make luggage. Ooh, I don't think I can get the slides to move forward. Oh, here we go. Brilliant. So the first items we made were belts. I mean, we didn't start with something as lovely and as wonderful as this. Fire hose is long and straight, belts are long and straight. For the first year, we just made belts, but the belts were incredibly popular. And that meant that, over the course of that year, Elvis learned to sew. We made our first prototype bag. Everyone now would think of doing a Kickstarter campaign. This is pre-Kickstarter. So we did an analog version of that. Elvis made one bag. I took it all over London. I convinced 200 people to pre-buy it face-to-face, not over a computer. And that allowed me to finance the first production run. So we do three things at Elvis and Kresse. We rescue materials, we transform them. And the third thing that we do that's really important is that we donate 50% of our profits to charity. And in the case of the fire hose range, 50% of the profits go to the firefighters charity. So we started pretty much in 2005, 2010, we had solved London's fire hose problem. The company had grown like this. Part of the reason that we had grown was because we give 50% of our profits to the firefighters charity. And a lot of people don't know this, but there's 66,000 fire service personnel in the UK, and they all loved what we do. So it was amazing to have that kind of brand ambassadorship supporting us from day one. But by the time we got to 2010, we were thinking, okay, we've kind of got the hang of fire hose. Why don't we take on a new material? And that really led us to look at another very large waste problem, which is leather waste. We had over the years, and I can't, it's kind of a joke now, but every single week someone sends us a new waste stream and says, can you fix this? Can you fix this? Can you fix this? To the extent that I'm only allowed to open these packages on a Friday night because Elvis knows that I'll become completely obsessed with that waste. And he's happy for me to become obsessed with a new waste, provided it's on a Saturday and a Sunday and not during the week when I'm supposed to be getting more important things done. But there was one saddle maker who sent us a beautiful bag of leather offcuts. And the reason you have offcuts is because a cowhide is shaped like this. And when companies cut out the pieces they want, the rest of the hide falls to the floor. And that waste, that offcut waste, is about 800,000 tons a year globally, 35,000 tons in Western Europe. So it's a problem. It's a significantly larger problem than the fire hose problem. And that led us to kind of want to solve it in a different way. And maybe this slide will make you think I'm a thinker, but I didn't design our leather solution. I gave Elvis basically a napkin that had all of these phrases written on it. I said, look, I want, people at this time were starting to talk about the circular economy, but nobody was designing for it. And I said, look, we need to make something that can be taken apart and made again. I don't want to make another composite product that can't be reused and reused and reused. So I gave him this brief that it had to be circular, it had to be shareable, it had to be something that people could build themselves, much like Lego. And Elvis went away and he came back and he came up with a system which is based on geometry. He came up with 3 shapes, then you can combine to make essentially whole new hides, but whole new hides of any size. This is a rug. And, in the same way that when we started with the fire hose, we started with belts, which are 2-dimensional. When we started with the leather system, we started with a 2-dimensional rug. What makes this circular is that Each one of those pieces there is hand woven together. You can take that apart if you don't like it anymore, or if you want to make two smaller rugs, or if you want to make a place, it's like lots and lots of placemats, you can recombine and reconfigure these. But if you also want to make something three-dimensional, you can take it apart and make a cube, which isn't super interesting. But if you don't like your cube anymore, because we've now proven you can work in 3 dimensions, you can take that apart and you can upholster a chair. And the cool thing, let's say with rugs or chairs, and what makes this quite fun and quite handy is that, let's say you spill something on your chair or on your rug, or your dog chews the corner of it. In a normal rug, well, then the rug is dead. But in our rugs, you just take those pieces out and put new pieces in. So it's repairable. You can take high traffic pieces and move them to low traffic areas. So it's very easy to adapt over time. And and you can also make bags, because we're bag makers. So we thought we should use our system in bags as well. And I think, when you're a company like ours that has set out to do these 3 things: rescue, transform, donate, one of the trickiest things for us when we were talking about the leather solution was how to come up with the right charity partner. And we thought, a lot of people were saying, oh, you have to do something with cows and something with animals. But for us, because the circular economy, whereby all material goods can be used and reused forever, and the whole thing is powered by renewable energy, we thought the best thing that we could do was make sure that our donations went into really the renewable energy revolution. And particularly, we fell in love with a charity based in India called Barefoot College, which has since the 70s become a world leader in training rural, largely illiterate women from incredibly poor backgrounds to become solar engineers. So we create scholarships for solar engineers at Barefoot. And so far we have trained, I think, 9 women. And this year we're going to add another 6 scholarships. So it's really exciting. But it's the kind of thing that, when you build value and you build goodness into a business model, it just starts to kind of get its own momentum in its own life. Everyone will tell you that you need a business plan for a business. I don't think you do. I think you need an Excel spreadsheet, and you need to have financial discipline. You need to know that the cash coming in some way exceeds the cash going out. Otherwise, your business will fall down. But beyond that, because that's just your financial discipline, I think what you need are values and goals. And for us, all of that is kind of on this slide. We make business decisions based essentially on one thing, and that's whether or not they're going to make the world better for other people's grandchildren. So yeah, it has to wash its face, has to make money, has to add to the mission, blah, blah, blah. But fundamentally, if it's going to make the world worse for other people's grandchildren, we can't do it. So we couldn't drill for oil or make landmines. The other thing that's quite important to us is multiple positive objectives. So there's a lot of people who also tell you that when you run a company, you have to be incredibly single-minded and you have to do one thing well. And I think that that's crap, particularly right now when we have about 10 years to save the planet from climate catastrophe. You have to do everything well. You have to be unbelievable at renewable energy, apprenticeships, rescuing fire hose, giving half of the money away, making sure that people understand what your mission is, making sure that you're not doing anything damaging to the environment, making your own packaging. I mean, it's not enough to do one thing. You have to do everything. My own personal motto is do more, be better. That's kind of how I wake up every day. I know that more needs to be done, and I know that it has to be done better. Because the world as it is isn't acceptable to me, and it isn't acceptable to anyone who really takes a step back and sees how much needs to be achieved to really help us, achieve a more equitable future and a planet that can sustain life in the long term. We are a certified social enterprise. Yay, always have been. And we were one of the first companies to become a B Corp in the UK. And why I love being a B Corp, and this is definitely something for you guys to look into if you haven't heard of this before. Some famous B Corps are Patagonia, Ben & Jerry's ice cream, Danone yogurt has recently certified, the Guardian newspaper. But the reason why we love being a B Corp is that it requires you to do a couple of things. You have to achieve this baseline score of awesomeness. Otherwise, you can't be one. And every time you recertify, your score has to improve. So they're not interested in companies that achieve a certain level of goodness and then park there. They want companies that are definitely recognize that there's a forward mission and that no company can be perfect and there's always room to improve. Love it. The second thing you have to do is you have to change the constitution of your business to say that shareholders are not king, to say that profit is not more important than planet or its people. And that's something we've always believed. But now it's legally enshrined in the documents that underpin our business. So now, even if we got an investor or anything like that, they couldn't take that out of the business. The heart of what we've built remains, which is very cool. And then there's one financial equation on this sheet, which is probably the only time you'll ever hear me get super excited about money. When we rescue a ton of leather, if you put that ton of leather in the ground, if you landfill it, you have to pay 410 pounds of landfill fee. If you give that ton of leather to me and I turn it into our leather system and I sell it, we generate 100,000 pounds of value. You know, I want people to understand how sexy and how incredible the circular economy can be. And sometimes the best way of doing that is to show how obscenely valuable this material can be if you apply creativity and love to it. If you just decide you don't care about it, well, it'll languish in landfill. But 100,000 pounds, nobody's sniffing at that. Not even the most cold-hearted capitalist company that we work with or partner with. They all realize that when they're throwing away beautiful materials, they're losing not a little bit of money, but an extortionate amount of money. And that's kind of one of the equations I use to sell, you know, the wider impact that Elvis and Kresse can have. And a lot of people always ask me what's next. And actually, this is something that is happening right now, which is incredibly exciting for me. We've always wanted to make belt buckles and metal hardware ourselves. It's not easy to do. And we only wanted to do that if we could do it in an Elvis and Kresse way, which means using rescued materials and renewable energy. In the UK, every year, 16 million aluminum cans, like the ones in this picture, are littered in our public spaces because people are morons and they think it's acceptable to throw a can onto the ground or a drinks container. Now, what's worse than that is that we value this material so little that 2 billion cans go in the wrong bin, which means they never get recycled. Aluminum is one of the most unbelievably noble metals. It has so much potential for use and reuse. When you recycle it, you use 95% less energy than when you mine it in the first place. And yet 20% of our cans are going in the wrong bin and not being recycled. So I thought, how can we collect these aluminum cans and make our hardware out of them? And how can we do that in a renewable way? Well, it turns out we had to design a machine to do that. So we're building a renewably powered, a solar powered forge. We're building it with Queen Mary University. And probably the coolest thing about this project is that we're doing that in an open source way. So the forge that we're building is completely to be shared with anyone. Anyone can copy the design, riff on the design, and use it in wherever they want for whatever reasons they want. Our first forge is basically, you know, the prototype is finished now, so it's already working. But also we've got open source partners who are already starting to build forges in South Africa, in Kent, and in Canada. So it's an incredibly powerful idea. So that's Elvis and Kresse in a nutshell. Hopefully there are lots of questions from the wider group.
Hello again, Kresse. And yet again, another fantastic presentation on Elvis and Kresse. I like the Lego-like idea that everything compounds on everything. There's a few things there that I haven't seen before, and some of them, I've seen the rug, which I love. I wish I had a house to own and have it on display because it's just amazing. I haven't seen the chairs before, and I haven't seen the cubes as well. So, and interesting to see what he's going to do with those cans in the future and what the future deserves for you. Taking today's topic and pitching like a pro to our audience, this is how a pro not usually would pitch. Of course, hearing more about your story, Kresse, and I knew some aspects of the story about the visits to the British Library, trying to understand more about materials and products. But you touch on something that I think is very important, and people in our audience would be keen to understand more. You said that you managed to sell or pre-sell Elvis and Kresse to some people.
Yeah.
So and as far as I understand from our conversations in the past, I also understand that you've been involved with fashion companies that you wouldn't first think of partnering with, one of them being Burberry, if I'm
Yes,
not
we have a
mistaken.
long-term partnership with Burberry.
So I just want to pick your thoughts on pitching Elvis and Kresse to B2B and B2C. B2B meaning everyday people like you and me, that's you coming up with this amazing bag and pitching in front of them, or just pitching to one individually. And on the other hand, B2C as in trying to partner with Burberry, maybe like you said, to say, listen, you can recycle some of your materials, you can make new products out of the materials that you're already using. So fundamentally, what are the differences here when Cressy pitches to maybe one person or to one company?
Okay, so there's a couple of things to unpack there. Like
Mhm.
one thing I can tell you is that whether you're pitching to a business or to an individual, you have to be authentically yourself. You have to, and for a company, your company has to be itself. You can't sell something that you can't make. It has to be true and honest, and uh, otherwise it falls apart. And for me, you also have to be friendly. You know, when we sold when we pre-sold these 200 tote bags, and that financed our whole first production run. I can see a question here about it in the thing. Um, you know, the beauty of that was by pre-selling these bags, we had enough money to finance the first production run. And after that, we never needed any external funding. We were always funded just by cash flow of sales of products. But how did I sell those bags? Well, I'm a friendly person, and I just approached everyone who I thought might be interested in it. And then you tell one person and say, hey, you know, if you think anyone else is interested in this, can you tell them? I mean, if I were doing it now, I would do it on Kickstarter. There's a platform for this. Probably instead of just selling 200, we could have sold 2 million of them. But at the time, 200 was enough to get us going. And it's the same as when you're selling B2C, and when you're trying to build a partnership with a business, you have to be really authentic, really truthful, really transparent. But also you have to, I always think that entrepreneurs have to be a little bit like stand-up comedians. You have to read the room. You have to find out not what people will laugh at, right? But you have to find out what about your story, and what about the story of your products, and what about your offering is engaging or interesting to people. And different audiences are different. You know, the fire service community loves the fact that we give 50% of the profits to the firefighters charity. They love it. The people who are, let's say, conscious consumers, they're buying organic food, they only, you know, they do really, really limited purchases, but they want to make sure that they buy something that meets their values. You know, a lot of those will buy our products because they're made of this rescued material. They might not love the whole fire hose thing, but they love the fact that it's rescued material. Then we have this whole other group of customers that love what we do because every single piece, because it's a vintage material, is different. So no two Elvis and Kresse products are alike. And those are people who buy bespoke things. You know, we have workshops now where people come down to make bags out of our rescued materials to match their Jimmy Choo shoes. That's not a conscious consumer or someone who likes the fire service. They like the bespoke element behind all of our products. Then there's people who like the fact that we repair, you know, we're committed to repairing things for life at cost, which means that repairs, you know, when they are required, are very inexpensive. And, you know, there's a lot of people who buy into longevity, and they want something that's going to last a really long time. We have a lot of people who are like, this is the only bag I'll ever buy. And that, you know, that's something certainly that we're very, very proud of. So I think all audiences are different. And when you're an entrepreneur, you need to know how to adapt. So, you know, it's true. Elevator pitch opportunities will happen to you. You need to know how to sell yourself in 10 seconds, 30 seconds, a minute and a half, 10 minutes, 2 hours. You need to have all of these different things ready to go. And I think one of the things that I did really early on, I have a bunch of like this amazing peer group of social entrepreneurs, and we got together. It was a ridiculously incredible time. There was 30 of us who were appointed to be social enterprise ambassadors by the government, and they sent us away for media training. And the one media training thing that I absolutely encourage all of you to do, because this has been invaluable for pitching, is that you should video yourself pitching. Okay. Take a video of yourself pitching. And the first time you watch it back, get all your friends around and watch it back with the sound off. And you will be shocked to see how much body language is either making your friends laugh, is distracting them, is turning them off, or is engaging. So watch it the first time with the sound off. Then just listen to it without watching it. And get your friend, get some beers, drink some wine, watch this a couple of times and take everyone's feedback. And make sure that in your peer group that you invite to really pick yourself apart, that you ask as diverse a crowd as possible, your grandparents, people who may not get the concept that you're trying to sell, particularly let's say you're doing something digital, definitely get your grandparents in the audience or older people in the audience who are not digital natives, because you need to make your story compelling to people of a different generation who may not have had the same access to technology. Make sure there's men, women, different backgrounds, different geographies. But yeah, that kind of watching yourself and being able to laugh at yourself and getting as much critiques and tips and tricks on your own presentation style is absolutely invaluable.
Okay, quite a few tips. I like the fact that you can that you suggested video yourself and invite friends for some beers and some wine, and then watch yourself in mute. Taking from what you said, and a big promoter of pitch to someone that is 6 years old, the same way that you pitch to someone that is 60 years old, and use body language as you convey the messages, and some very interesting insights and tips there to our audience. Going back to pitching, and you kind of divided the pitching in 10 seconds, 30 seconds, 1 minute, 10 minutes, even 2 hours. According to you, Kresse, in your experience, what are the things that normally say, if you're pitching in front of a panel of maybe investors or people that might be keen in investing in your company, what are the must-dos in the sense of what are the things that you are most likely going to be asked to include in your pitch? And I ask these questions because I know that quite a few of our students are not from the business school, for example, so they might not be business minded or numerically minded, so to say. And I just want to pick your thoughts on the things to maybe include if you're going to pitch in front of an audience that might be willing to invest in the company.
Yeah, I think this is my first job was at a venture capital company, so I certainly have been on both sides of the pitch table. But your concept of what your company does, you have to be able to present that in an incredibly simple, memorable way. They have to be able to leave and be able to describe your business in 20 seconds. They have to. The next thing is that you have to explain also very clearly how you're going to execute. If you're, at whatever phase you're at the business, whether you're prototyping, whether you're, scaling up, whatever phase that might be, you have to explain exactly what your execution plan is. I mean, if you said to me, if I was going to investors right now, I would say that when I was talking about execution, I would say that 4 or 5 years ago, we decided on a digital only strategy. We put this much money into the website and into building a digital team. We've now subsequently had 4 years of this kind of growth, this, and the other thing. And then I would say, now we want to do this. And this is how we're going to execute that plan. And that's why we're raising the money. So I would show them how we've executed in the past and how we're going to use the new money to execute in a bigger, grander, more scaled way. And you have to be very clear about that, because you don't want them to leave going, what are they going to spend the money on? What do they need it for? And you also have to, certainly at the point that you're asking for money, you have to be very clear on who you are, who else is in the team, and what their commitment is to the project. So many companies fall apart because the founders are not equally committed. They're not, all doing it full time. They might have completely different understandings of where the business is going to go. And you, like, an investor needs to go, you know what, like, I can see these people are committed. And if they're not committed, I can easily replace this person or that person of the team who isn't committed. But you have to be able to show that there is a team there to, you know, your simple idea, execute that idea, and who are those people who are going to execute that idea. And you have to show that you're trustworthy. You know, anything that you can do to build confidence in someone is going to be helpful. And that's hard when you don't have a track record. That was really hard for us in the beginning when, you know, I started my first company when I was 22 years old, and I had no track record, and I was living in Hong Kong, and it was incredibly difficult to build trust at that point. But you sort of slowly do it, project by project by project. Don't ever let anyone down, because it will come back to haunt you. The best thing that you can ever do is be competent, and make sure that people really, you know, that they understand you're the kind of person who delivers.
Okay, you mentioned something that I find also very interesting about letting people down, and I'm probably going to pick on failure. We have a question up here from the audience about failure,
Yeah.
but I just want to ask you a quick question on in a pitch, in a presentation, in a given situation like of this sort. How do you pick up from a moment where you had maybe a lapse, or maybe you had a blank, or maybe you're not entirely sure what the question was, or maybe you lost track of your line of thought? So what would be your advice, Kresse?
Well, the thing is, in business and in life, you fail all the time. You know, you make mistakes all the time. And you can't let that get you down. I mean, I have a terrible sense of direction. I get lost all the time. All the time. The only result of me getting lost all the time is it's made me fitter, because I have to then find my way home, because generally I get lost when I'm out running. So I end up running twice the distance I ever intended to. But I think how you have to think about any failure, particularly in business, is you have to go back to the problem. So if for me, the first problem was fire hose. So we had a terrible year in 2012. We just had all this horrible things happen into our business, and then lots of things we couldn't control. And we were small, so we were at that phase where one thing can just kill you, and it's not necessarily, you know, something that has anything to do with you. You know, outside forces like an economic collapse, or in our case, Burberry discovered our manufacturer and bought all their capacity, and an American distributor ran off with loads of stock and didn't pay. And, you know, we had all these crappy things happen, and we could have shut the business down at that point. But, you know, Elvis and I actually just sat down and we were like, no, you know, rescuing the hose is important. We found a way to rescue the hose. How do we carry on doing that despite everything that's happening? So you go back to the mission, and then, you know, rebuild from there. And if that means, you know, I've loved seeing how businesses, it's so unfair. The pandemic is really affecting some businesses incredibly unfairly. You know, if you're in the hospitality sector right now, you're just on your knees. It's just hideous. But there's been some unbelievable pivots from businesses who've just been doing absolutely everything they can to stay open and to get through this. And certainly we had to adjust. We're a manufacturer. We manufacture in the UK. We've had to reconfigure our entire manufacturing setup so that we could have a socially distant team still come into manufacture, because they can't work from home. You know, we have a 2-ton clicking press at the bottom of these stairs. That can't be in someone's home. So you kind of just have to have the view that you're always going to have to adjust. You're always going to have to pick yourself up and keep going. And you have to, maybe you need some sense of optimism. You need some sort of feeling like, yeah, if I just, you know, you can't carry on doing the same thing if it's a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to think, let's go back to the mission. Am I tackling this in the right way? If I discover a better way to rescue fire hose tomorrow, or something that I can do with it that's of greater value and that's going to increase the donations to the firefighters charity, I would stop making bags tomorrow and make something else. Okay. That's how I feel about the fire hose problem.
In fact, food for thought then. Picking up a question now from our audience, and this question is from Diana. Thank you, Diana, for your question. Diana is asking, how did you choose your team? And do you think it's possible to include a stranger?
So, you know, I got In my first business, I had started my first business entirely by myself. And I actually knew that I needed a business partner because I'm not super disciplined. And I knew that I needed somebody who was going to be better at managing the finances, logistics, things like that. And what I did in Hong Kong at the time was I sort of sent an email round to everyone that I knew or that I thought was interesting. And I said, I'm looking for somebody who's like this. Does anybody know anyone? And somebody said, yeah, my younger brother. So my first business partner was someone called Stuart, and he was absolutely great at all of those things. And he was a complete stranger, but we went for some long walks, some long runs. You know, I met some of his other friends, much like you would sort of vet someone you were going to date, right? And we started that first company together. And then you know, that we both, you know, we both moved on from that company. We're still, you know, we're still friends. You know, it's great. But Elvis, you know, Elvis and I met each other, and we're, you know, partners in life as well as partners in business. And we were partners in life long before we became partners in business. So he definitely wasn't a stranger to me, but he is the best business partner I could ever dream of having. But you do definitely 100%. If you're going to have a business partner, you have to, it's like you're married. You're going to spend a lot of time with that person. You have to have aligned visions. You know, some marriages break down because someone wants a child and the other person doesn't want the child. Someone has these religious beliefs and they're very, very core to who they are as a human being. And someone might have other religious beliefs and they're very core to who they are. And unless in those both situations, one of the two is willing to compromise, fundamentally those relationships, you know, are going to struggle to succeed. So it's the same in business. You need to make sure that your business partner wants the same things as you do, wants to work as hard as you do, or yeah,
I
or as
was
relaxed. You know, I do know some entrepreneurs where they're very 9 to 5 people, and they're a great, you know, where they're great mixes because they, you know, as a team, none of them want to work after 5 p.m. I think that's also acceptable. But where it doesn't work is where somebody's 7 days a week, 10 hours a day, and the other person isn't. And then, you know, you get these issues of, well, I'm doing more and blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
Yeah, you gotta, a tough choice. Picking a business partner is
we funny that you say you married to the team members, because in our previous seminars we also had someone saying you are married to the investors, and today you also said you are married to the business. So there's a lot of relationships going on there that you can be 100% sure. And like you said, this is for life, and if you drive it with a passion, it normally is for
Yeah.
life. Picking up a few more questions here. We have one from Yoga. Yoga is saying, thank you so much for the story, Kresse. My first startup seminar was run by you last year, and that's when I learned more about social entrepreneurship, which is what I'm pursuing now. I'm grateful to you for that. A lot has happened in the past year. How has that affected the company and you? That's an interesting question.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, uh, you know, this COVID has definitely affected everyone. There's no question about that. For us in late February, you know, we started to think that maybe the UK government wasn't taking as seriously as they should. So we actually closed our factory here a week earlier than the government because you know, we just wanted to look after our team. And then very slowly, one by one, after we had moved everything around and changed basically the shape of the workshop, we brought our teammates back one by one, in a safe way so that we could keep going. All of our retail partners closed, so we stopped getting retail orders. But because we're predominantly an online business, our online orders increased. So we haven't overall lost out. You know, we did better than we did the previous year. So, you know, we certainly can't complain because we're doing absolutely fine. It has, you know, certain collaborations that we were going to do have been postponed. We have an amazing thing happening with the V&A Museum, but that was supposed to launch months and months ago now, and it's been postponed again and again and again. And hopefully we'll hope it happen next year. But we've got lots of things like that which just weren't able to go ahead, and that's just as a business, which is a shame. But on a personal level, still let's stick with the business. In the first week of lockdown, Elvis and I went for a long walk, and we said, look, like, if everything shuts and people stop buying, what are we going to do? And we agreed that we were going to devote a lot of our time this year to R&D and working on new wastes and creating new solutions, because those waste problems aren't going away. So we took, from March onwards, Elvis and I dedicated probably 50% of our time to R&D. And the outcome of that is that we've got this collaboration with Queen Mary University. We're working on 3 new material solutions. All of those are going to come to fruition in 2021. So instead of us just hibernating, we used that time where I wasn't having to go and give speeches, I wasn't having to travel, and we used that time for R&D. So that's great. On a personal level, my family lives in New Zealand and Canada. I haven't been able to see them. Elvis has elderly parents that were shielding for the whole first lockdown, and we haven't been able to see them. If I didn't have a partner like Elvis, this would have been an incredibly difficult time. But I do have a partner like Elvis, and we're based in this rural, amazing location, and we have a dog, and we've been able to get outside and be outside every day. So, we are fine. And actually, we feel very guilty about that, which is even more increased our feeling like we have to turn that guilt into more impact for the business. And I think that's why we've been able to be so successful with the R&D that we're working on so far, because we just want to do more good, even more than we did before. But yeah, it focuses the mind.
So high expectations there for the future to come, and what a location, I'll say it again. And now knowing that you also have a dog, it must be amazing to go for long walks surrounded by nature, have a pet by your side. A question from me, and this is more on something that has been key to your tonight's seminar, is waste. Where do you see the future of waste, or what do you think might be the future of waste? Is waste, a bit like Elvis and Kresse, going to be an important part of our lives, as in we're going to bring it to the front of our mind rather than to the back of our yards, or how do you see it?
So the future of waste will be very much like the past of waste, if you go back to early human civilization. We didn't produce waste historically. It's a new phenomenon. It's something that really has come out of the last 100 years. And in the same way that we invented it, we're going to uninvent it. We're using materials at a completely unsustainable rate. The idea behind the circular economy is that all materials, everything you make, has to be able to be taken apart and remade, has to be permanently recyclable. And unless you can do that, I think you're not really going to have a future business. If you're relying on single-use plastics, single-use goods, throwaway cheap stuff, there just isn't going to be enough material in the future to sustain those kinds of business models. And the tax will be so much higher on material goods that you'll have to really justify the material you use and how it gets used over time. We're going to see a lot more rental. We're going to see a lot more leasing, particularly with goods like cars and dishwashers, televisions, things like that, where you've got rare earth materials that need to be put in a way that they can be taken out. But yeah, we won't have waste.
Okay.
I think waste is something that dies before I do.
Fingers crossed, and I do hope that we all both live to see that happening, actually, and agreeing with you that waste just became a bit of a new thing when we just started to kind of single use. Everything is kind of disposable, and like you, and I also feel like a lot has changed throughout the time that I've lived. And before, it was the Amazon forest, and we had to cut down on paper, and then it was the plastic. And it's interesting to see that this is now becoming part of a wider issue, and saving our planet, and trying to make use with the things that we have at our disposal, rather than just to throw everything away and start again. Picking a few more questions up. I'm conscious of the time, Kresse. Is that okay if I ask you a few more questions?
Yeah, absolutely. I can see this one that's saying interesting about free time and free thinking. I think, you know, I've always been a runner, and that's always been a time where I come up with ideas. Now I run with a dog, or we take the dog for walks, and that's again where we come up with ideas. But I also think in your free thinking, you know, we sometimes get trapped in silos. So, you know, I might be a waste expert, but what's been so liberating over this last year is working with the team from Queen Mary University, and who are experts in polymers and ceramics and renewable energy. And actually, sometimes you need to find people who are completely different from you and have completely different skills, and then try and tackle problems together. Because, oh my goodness, I feel like we can fast forward so many things if we work, you know, if you take entrepreneurial skills and mix them more with a sort of academic integrity. And then the next question is, for sustainable UK companies starting up, do you know of any UK initiatives who help out? Yes, for social enterprises, Unlimited is amazing. So that's UNLTD. It's an amazing resource for young social entrepreneurs. Definitely, you know, definitely libraries are a great resource, but also so are the open forums. You know, so there are anything that you are interested in, I can guarantee you there'll be a university professor somewhere in the country that has that as their expertise. And guess what? Their phone numbers are on their websites. You can call, you can read their, if you read their theses, if you read some of their books, and then you make a phone call, trust me, you'll be able to have access to them in their networks, because their phones do not ring. So I think there's so much out there. You've just got to find out what you're passionate about. One, what skills you have. If you can work out what you're passionate about and what skills you have, then you've definitely got all kinds of potential for future, because you can work out what skills you don't have, find someone who has those. Let's go tackle that passion project together.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, yeah, just collaborate, be open, network, discover, Google.
Okay, and keep calling people with the thesis, and then call people. And like you said, a lot of us are working remotely, so this actually offers a great opportunity for a lot of people to even invest time in research and development of themselves. I've received a few questions actually from our team WhatsApp group, and one of my colleagues is actually asking what is missing in social impact space, in your opinion.
What's missing is actually, I want legislation to change. So right now, the Companies Act in the UK, you know, just which are the laws that underpin how businesses are structured in the UK, says that the shareholder is the most important, and that the directors of the company, their fiduciary responsibility is to the shareholder. And just imagine if the Companies Act changed and all businesses had to sign what I do as a B Corp to say that the planet and its people are as important as the shareholder. Every business, in order to justify its existence, would suddenly have to be an impact business. So we wouldn't have slum landlords anymore. We wouldn't have, you know, I mean, just all these horrible businesses would disappear. Amazon would have to pay its taxes. It would be amazing. You know, so I want that legislation to change. And actually, as a community, the B Corp community is fighting for that. I think the other thing that's really interesting is that a lot of businesses are racing to net zero now, and not net zero by 2050, net zero by 2030. So I think that's something that's really, really interesting in the business space, those two.
Okay, we have more questions coming in. One question that I would like to ask Kresse, Elvis and Kresse being the number one. What are the other three favorite social startups that you like, or that you've seen in the social entrepreneurial sphere that you can tell us about?
Well, one of my favorites is Toast Ale. So they make beer, but they make it out of waste bread. Absolutely love that business. Obviously, because they're like us and they use waste. Also, they're a social enterprise and a B Corp. Yay! Give yourself a big thumbs up. I also love Finisterre. It's a clothing brand based in Cornwall, and they're, you know, they really are trying to connect people with the sea. They're doing a lot of work on, you know, trying to reinvent the wetsuit, so wetsuits can be recycled, which currently they can't.
What's the name again? Sorry, Chris.
They're called Finisterre.
Finisterre, yes.
Yeah, they're another good one. Also a B Corp. And then, you know, one of my perennial favorites is Divine Chocolate. because it's how can you not love really good chocolate that's 50% owned by cocoa growers in Ghana? It's turned the whole business model of chocolate on its head and made it work for the growers and the farmers, and it's delicious.
Chocolate, beer, and clothes.
Yes.
On.
I also have B Corp lawyers. I have B Corp accountants. I don't have to leave the social enterprise or B Corp world my whole life. I read the Guardian newspaper. It's easy.
Kresse, we're just going to wrap it up with maybe 3 more questions. So I'll start from the last one we received on the chat. So what are your advice on structuring good answers to the questions, especially when the questions are unexpected or even tough ones? So we're on the pitch and angle.
So it's fine. People often, when it's a tough question, people don't mind if you wait. If you think, okay, let me think about that. And sometimes you can't answer right away. If I can't answer something right away, like I don't know the answer, the best thing to say is, I actually don't know that. I'm going to have to check it and I'm going to get back to you. Then you have to be like lightning. You have to go away and check and get back to someone. But I always think that you have to structure an answer with a narrative. You have if you can weave a story into your answer or an example into your answer, it's going to be that much more profound for people. So, if you say, what were some of your failures? And I say, actually, we had this terrible year where, we lost our manufacturing capacity and, because Burberry stole our factory unwittingly, but you'll remember that, you'll remember that. And you kind of, the more honest and open and transparent you can be, the more people will trust you. And sometimes people get really hung up in businesses and they think, oh, it's like all proprietary and I have to keep this all really close to my chest. I actually think the opposite. We have an open workshop. Anyone can come in at any time and ask me anything they want. And I think the reason why it's so easy for me to answer these questions for you tonight is you've got to remember, I've been doing this for 15 years.
You started somewhere.
It wasn't always this easy for me in the beginning. But again, get your crew of people together, make them watch you pitch, and then get them to grill you. Get them to pretend they're American overpaid lawyers and get them to grill you. And I can say American overpaid lawyers because I'm a Canadian and we can get away with it.
So that might be the beginning of a beautiful friendship or the end of a friendship that wasn't meant to be.
Yeah.
One question from Ghana, and this is, I think we covered something similar to this today. And thank you, Ghana, for the question. Ghana is saying, so interesting, knowledgeable, and resourceful session. The question is, what is your best advice given for future generations?
All I really want from anyone is for people to be aware that the world that we're in is facing some serious, enormous challenges. We've got a freaking American president that won't leave, and that's a liar and a cheat. So my best advice is that you have to be open, you have to be honest, but you have to start thinking and picking a problem. And then you have to figure out what skills you can apply to that problem. Because what I really want for future generations is for them to be useful. I can tell you, we feel because we are doing something every day to solve problems, it gives you this enormous sense of purpose and of value. And even on your worst day, even when you got a hangover, even when you are really, really ill, you still want to get up and go to work because you're doing something that fills you with so much joy. So find a problem you can sink your teeth into and learn how to, and get the skills you need to tackle it, because that just will deliver you a life of purpose and joy.
Okay, and let the passion fuel your dreams. We finish off with one question from me, and this is actually a question that someone asked Jenny Griffiths, which shares a title like you. She's also an MBE, and someone in the audience asked, "How does it feel to have an MBE?" And in your case, Kresse, how does it feel, or what is it like?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I didn't, because I'm not British. So when I got this phone call saying like, would you have an MBE? I was like, can I get back to you? And then I called Elvis and I said, what's an MBE and should I accept it? Because I thought it was like a I don't know, like a statue. I don't know. I didn't know what it was. And for me, yeah, it felt amazing, particularly because Elvis's parents just were completely overwhelmed, and they got to come to the, to Buckingham Palace with us on the day. And it was incredible to meet the Queen. And she was just like, she was actually just really, really kind and curious. And I didn't expect that. I didn't expect her to be so curious, and she was, and that was really overwhelming to experience her gratitude for the work that we do. So yeah, I guess I see it as just this. It was just a big thank you from the UK for the work that we do, and so of course that feels amazing.
Well, congratulations on the MBE, and congratulations on yet another amazing seminar, Kresse. I'm going to wrap it up here. I'm conscious that we've gone 10 minutes over the time, but I would like to thank you so much for yet again your incredible insights to everything that you shared with us today, particularly the passion as a driver for you to get the skills and to actually contribute in a positive way to make this world better. And with this, ladies and gentlemen, we wrap up our 2020 Startup Seminar series. I mentioned before that all the events will be available online for you to watch on demand. Once again, Kresse, thank you so much. I'm sure we'll be meeting again soon and seeing each other again soon at some point. And for everyone at home, stay safe, stay sane, sanitize. I know it's only in a month's time, but Merry Christmas, everyone. And maybe see you at City Spark COVID-19 challenge or in one of our events in the near future. Until then, have a good evening, everyone, and see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
You. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.